Hello folks, I am back, and this time I'm here to do a question and answer session. But before I do that, I'm just going to tell everyone thank you very much for responding to my videos, my posts, and so forth. And just feel free to give your opinions, good, bad, or indifferent. You know, we're all here. We all got our opinions. The other thing I want to say is go check out Core Essentials. And I'll leave the description in the bottom, but check out Core Essentials for your belt needs as well as other accessories, 10% off using my code Keenan10. All right, let's get to this. The question was, and unfortunately I don't have the guy's name. I've been trying to search it. He asked me a question regarding the Legion triggers and the Legion triggers on the X5 Legion versus, let's say, the P226 Legion single action only. Now, when you look at both of these firearms, the triggers are very similar. Let's start with the single action only, and you're going to see this particular trigger on here. The first time I ever saw one of the flat triggers was on the 226 Legions, the flat single action only triggers. And this is the first time I ever saw this type of trigger, and then eventually they put it down into their striker fire line. But this is the question he's asking regarding the single action only trigger versus the striker fire trigger. And as you see, single action only, and that trigger is right there. A lot of people get nervous about these triggers on the 226 and the 229 single action only because they worry about whether or not this is going to snap or whatnot. So let's go over to the Legion trigger on the X5. And as you see, similar profile on both of these. This is for the striker firearm here. And they are pretty much similar, except this one is scalloped out, so it can be a little bit lighter. And I'm going to bring this one in a little closer. Now, if you look on this one, it has a little bit of a hook in between here, not too steep or pronounced. And on this one, it's a little bit more pronounced. I'm trying to get this to focus. A little bit more pronounced. So you see both of these triggers, they're flat-faced, and they are very good triggers for both platforms. Now, before I show you anything else, I want to let the YouTube gods know that this is an empty firearm, as you see there, and right in here. And I'm going to do this again with the X5 Legion. No ammo in here, and also it is clear. Now, one of the things that I wanted to check out was, and what he mentioned is there any big difference or is one better than the other? So I'm going to break these down, and I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a gunsmith, so I cannot really answer the mechanical questions about both of these trigger systems. I'm just going to show you what they look like in comparison to one another. Now, as you see right here, I'm going to try to hold this as best I can. Everybody knows on the P320 they have their modular system and with the FCU. As you see here, this is your FCU. This is your system right here, if I can get that to focus. Pretty much standard for the P320 series. All that right in there. Now, let's look at the top one. The top one's going to be the single action only on the P226 Legion. And the system is here, your spring here. Of course, you're going to see the noticeable difference of the hammer right in there. And there are probably areas under here that I not able to show because this is pretty much all internalized like in this particular area. So like I said, I'm not a gunsmith. I cannot explain that. And again, if I take this grip module out, take this grip module off of the FCU, and let's see if I can get that, you'll see how it's set up here. Now, what's interesting about both firearms, they have a similar feel when you pull their triggers. And I'm putting these back together so you can see what I'm talking about. Of course, I have to do this off camera because the YouTube gods think it's showing manufacturing, etc. of parts, etc. So I digress. But here, if you look at the X5 Legion trigger here, unfortunately, I don't have a Lyman gauge. I guess I need to invest in one. As you see here, I'm pulling the trigger. Notice that take up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that take up. Now watch the mush as I pull. So I'm going to go pull the trigger. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not the most accurate count, but that's what I'm giving you right there. I'm going to try that again. Let's see what happens here. The slack is taken up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right there. You see, that's where it breaks. Now, let's try it in comparison with the hammered fire 226 Legion. As you see here, the hammer is cocked back because this is a single action only firearm, and it's the only way it's going to fire at this point. Notice that there's that take-up, longer take-up, I would say. Let me just take a look at this. Sorry, the camera's shaking. Shorter take-up here, but there's a lot of mush. And the funny part about that mush is when you're dry firing, a lot of people have complained about you get that weird thud. And that's what most people complain about. So right here, we're going to pull, take up the slack. There's a generous amount of slack right here. I'm at the wall right here. So we're going to pull this 1. Oh, you saw that went at 1. Okay, I'm going to try that again. I'm going to take up the slack here. Take up the slack. Long slack. 1. And that's what you get. Where there's mush right here. And you heard me count to 6. You heard me count to 1 here. This is not the accurate way of measuring. I'm just doing this verbally. So I know people want to say something in the comments, but this is the only way I could say this. Now, in defense of this firearm, when you're shooting the X5 Legion on the range, and you shoot this on the range, you're not going to notice the mush. You're not going to notice the count that I was talking about, where as I'm pulling through the mush to get the trigger to break. You're not going to get to really notice that under firing conditions. One thing I really like about this particular firearm, I think for me, and just for me, it is the best shooting striker firearm. And because I can shoot this very well, very accurate. Some of you seen my me shooting tape with this firearm with a single action. With a striker firearm. Like I said, I think it's my best shooting one. It's not my favorite striker firearm. I've often said it's the VP9 for me, and I've also like other firearms, not only just the VP9, but the P10F, the CZ P10F. As well as the, let's say, the PDP that's come out. So I'm not saying this is the best striker fire, but for me, as the best trigger for target shooting, I guess, if I want to say that, because there's going to be a lot of people want to say PPQ, PDP. This trigger is very, very good. Getting back to this particular firearm, this is the interesting trigger. The trigger, I kind of prefer this trigger. If I'm going to do a versus video, and which I am going to put these out on the range on film, I know how accurate I am with this. I haven't shot this in a while, but I think that I can really put out some really decent groups with this. And be prepared. I'm going to do another versus video. I think I did one before, but this is going to be, I did one before on the Staccato C2 versus the P229 Legion single action only. So this is going to go up against the Staccato P. So I'm going to do that because I think the way this trigger is, I think it could somewhat compete with the Staccato. It is something about this trigger. Also, with that future comparison, you notice I used to call this my 2011 before I owned a 2011. So you'll see a lot of this in the future. But to answer the question, which one is better? I can't really give you an answer. I think they are different mechanically because one is striker fire, one is hammer fired. I think the trigger systems are different, but they share its strength in with trigger pulls. Like I said, similar profiles. You cannot lose with either one. And they are really, really good triggers for both of them. I would prefer, I don't know. It's like, as you see, it's kind of perplexing me when you're looking at both of these. I'm an old school guy, so I'm going to lean towards the 226 Legion because a single action only, because I have a love affair with the classic line. So I'm going to lean towards this. This is going to come to a very close second. But leave your comments down below which one between the two that you think is better. And I want to know, do you think the Legion trigger, does it compete with the PDP or PPQ or any other striker firearms? And also, I want you to think about this one against, let's say, the Staccato P and possibly some 1911s. So I'm sorry I couldn't give a direct answer, but I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say that the P226 Legion single action only is the winner. With that said, happy shooting, stay safe, #2A.